waking up, let him go. La, 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 la. All is welcome here. La, 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 la. All is welcome here. La, la, let him go, let him go. La, 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 oh, oh, let's welcome you. La, 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 all is welcome here. All is welcome here. All is welcome here. And now, here. And now, here. And good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Wednesday, and we are going to be talking about, actually it's a Q&A, so you get to ask questions and we get to find answers to the 5 unity principles. And I'm noticing already that there's 2 typos in this document, so I did pretty well. So let's take a moment and settle ourselves in prayer, and then let's just get started. Take a nice deep breath. Let everything go. Take another breath and just let the day go, knowing that we come here to open ourselves to the divine, to open ourselves to the light that shines in and through each one of us. And as we sit together, talk together, pray together, not only are we open to our own light, we are open to each other's light, and then we go out into the world and we spread that light wherever we go. And it is how we spread the message of light and love, and that there is only one power, one presence, one mind, one heart. And we give thanks for the ability and the privilege of coming together in this way, because not everybody gets to do this. And it is a very special time for us. And so we say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Okay, so the 5 unity principles, or if you look at this, it says the 5 unit principles. So, okay. We say them every Sunday in church. And I started looking into them a while ago for some Sunday talk I gave. And, I realized, of course, that there was an original version, and then most of the other churches change them some way and make their own version that they say, if they say them on Sundays or however they use them. And I don't really think that they lose their meaning, but I thought it would be fun to go through and look at what we say here at SLC, and then look at the original version and see if that changes it for us. And then, maybe if you wanted to write your own version of it, and you don't have to do it tonight, you can take it home and play with it. I just gave this to you to have something to look at, really. the one that I get the most comments on is when we get to it is that people are inherently good. And I actually had a thought about that. Now, there is a book. It is called The Five Principles. It's by Ellen Davenport. And I got it, and I was glancing through it, and I thought I was going to really read it and research it and be all expert-y up here. And then I thought it would be more fun for me to help discover this with you. So I can use this for reference, but I am not going to be lecturing on you at you about what this book says. I think it's going to be more fun for us to discover our own five principles. So with that said, let's go ahead and so God is absolute good, ever present is what we say on Sundays. So then what we say, the original one is the same thing. Thank you, RJ. We say the same thing. So what does this say to you? What happens for you when you're saying this one? Do you believe it? Does it resonate with you? It's safe to say whatever happens for you here.
Did you say God is good and everywhere present?
God is absolute good and everywhere present, which is, yeah. So, do you have any kind of reaction to that? Ronnie?
Well, if you've been in unity very long, you know that you have learned that God is good. Regardless of where you are, God is still with you. It's not as if he goes and takes a coffee break. And present, if you're there, he is present. If you're not there, she still is present.
Thank you. That's perfect. I figured this one would be kind of the easiest one, the least of the, yes, Elaine.
I think not so much and now I've been in unity for several years, so it resonates as truth for me the first time I heard it, but I think through other faith traditions and how I was raised Catholic perhaps, and just the different versions of God, and I work in youth ed, and when you talk about or work with kids and just ask about different depictions. So I think of the fire and brimstone God, or the God of justice, or the Old Testament God when you talk about old stories and smiting in a whole city, but type of a thing. So I think it's beautiful among New Thought and Unity folks that this is of the belief, but I also know it's not it's could be a very different view of God for a lot of people who aren't in the Unity movement or New Thought tradition.
Most of the books that are written about this and the 12 powers always have a chapter about what's your perception of God, what's your view of God, and how does it change when you start looking at what we say. And the everywhere present part may maybe not be so hard for people because we all kind of think that God is everywhere all the time, watching us, even if you have the negative God, right? So, okay, great. All right, let's get to the interesting one. So we say people are inherently good.
So
yeah.
when,
RJ, the people behind you can't see me. Can you move to? Yeah, there you go. Just one over. Thank you. Perfect. So yes. So if you just go with people are inherently good, what does that do for you? What does that do to you? Before we get to the original one.
I don't think I thought about it much until I got into unity, that people are inherently good. But anybody taking a look at a little newborn baby, they're inherently good.
Right.
Even if they have handicaps at birth or whatever, you can just sense the little spirit and inherently good. And, how that goes awry, I think there's many forms of it going awry with people. But, yes, they're inherently good.
Yeah, I had a woman after service one day she said, I wish one of you would give a talk on this because she has trouble with this one. And I understand why. Yes.
So I grew up a Southern Baptist, and I would say that this is not what we were taught. There was a lot of talk about original sin, for example. So as the years have gone on and I've developed in my own faith, I've stepped away from that towards people are inherently good. But I think that that's still sometimes in the reptile part of my brain is still there.
And I was thinking today when I looked at this is that my guess is that this was possibly the Fillmores doing a countering that idea that we are born in sin, because that is so much of what traditional Christianity, you're born in sin and then you have to work your way back out of it. Right. Because I looking at baptizing as just put protection around you for being here, Elaine.
Well, let me
Yes. Yeah, you're allowed
jump
to
in.
talk too.
But when it says people are inherently good, I have to remember that I'm one of those people. So, as opposed to just thinking of people as some other people or some concept. So that helps me to remember that I'm one of those people too.
Can we maybe have the next slide, Cameron? Yeah, and Elaine, so human beings have a spark of divinity within their very essence of God, and therefore they are inherently good. Go ahead.
Beautiful. I think that says, the expanded version is going to address what I was going to speak to in the sense of our human nature. And I know I have family members who are auditors, and when you're taught to be an auditor, their answer will be, if you leave a group of people a lot of money, people are inherently not good. or you have to look for and they'll say, well, it's just, and their excuse is, it's human nature. Do you know what I mean? It's just this mindset of these rules exist because, people who might need to take care of their families or whatever, and if there's money there, they'll take it if the mindset of the company doesn't need it. But whatever. But I think it's interesting how different mindsets are by human nature. People are, whether it's their ego, they're greedy or self-serving or selfish. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like unity really. Well, I think we'll get to another part where it's our thoughts that create that reality. And so I think it's interesting that we start with God is absolute good, because I think you can argue, well, is he good when a little baby dies, or is he good when countries have famine? And so you know what I mean? I think those are two different things. And how can you say people are good? Just look at the world and look at the 5 o'clock news. So I get it when people struggle with our principles.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at it, it starts with God is absolute good, and then we say God is it within each one of us. So there is a part that is within us that is good. And it's about boundaries, right? I mean, the laws we set up about people messing with other people's money, there's a boundary around that, but also we teach children a lot of things that we probably shouldn't, but we have to teach kids boundaries to keep them safe, but just because a child does something that's maybe not safe for them doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they don't know. That's right. Yes.
We also teach children don't talk to strangers.
Hey, wait, please use the microphone because the people on the live stream can't hear you. Thank you.
We're also teaching our children don't talk to strangers, don't open the door without knowing, blah, blah, blah. So it's complex.
It is very.
And children don't really know boundaries, So when I heard in the people are inherently good, something really wiggled inside of me that didn't feel comfortable, because I wasn't raised that way, for one, and my parents weren't inherently good. So how can I go out in the world thinking, oh, people are inherently good, But I'll look around and I'll say, I see God in all that I look at, the air I breathe, the plants that are growing, or I'll see people walking along, and I'll give them that benefit of the doubt that inherently good.
Yeah.
But I kind of struggle with that, and it kind of tweaks my brain a little bit.
Well, I had a mentor back in I was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and this man was deeply spiritual, and I'm going to have to censor this because he used a different word than I'm going to use. The word he used started with an A, but he said, Deborah, everyone is a child of God. Some people simply manifest as jerks. Only he didn't say jerks. So it's really, your parents probably when they were infants, but all that stuff that happens to us informs us, and and what we take in and what we start putting back out again. Yes. Did you have something else to say before? Okay, come back to her, RJ, when Ronnie's done.
Well, it says that God is everywhere, or good is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let somebody tell you that you are not good. There's a lot of that goes around, and you are good because you personally know that you are good, and that is who counts. And yes, you teach your children not to walk off with a stranger, but there was an incident in Sacramento where somebody, drunk grandfather, left his 7-year-old little girl with a street lady. But it turned out that was a good thing because the sheriff's office is trying to get the lady someplace to live, something to eat, into her classes. So we may not know, but when you believe, it manifests itself to you, and not only yourself, but to the other people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Dave, will you hand the microphone over here?
Thank you. I was just going to share, I was talking with somebody in the park, and he had this beautiful dog, and the dog was probably 8 months old. And he said, the first year of a dog is very important to never have them be afraid. He said, if the animal is afraid, it'll never go away.
Yeah.
And I pondered that, and I thought, that's the same, I think, for children.
Yes, it is.
Because there was nothing but 2,000% fear. I never knew what the atmosphere was going to be like once I opened my eyes in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So
And no matter, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
so it's again, it goes back to saying inherently good.
Yeah.
And I think what triggers is something that's trying to surface really deep inside, and for me to finally let it go, because I don't need all that fear anymore.
And yeah, but the work that you get to do around that to rise out of that. That's the journey. That's the journey that we're on. I actually have a cat we found her outside and she was injured. And if we hadn't found her, I don't think she would have survived the night. She was probably 5-6 weeks old, and brought her in and took care of her and loved her and everything. And that cat is still skittish to this day, even though she's been nothing but loved and supported and is safe, because the trauma was so severe when she was less than 5 weeks old. And so I watch her, and it's and I think about that a lot. So we could get into how you would say it, but I was just thinking it might be a fun exercise when you go home or whatever, or if you come up with an idea, and share it with us. But how would you say this to yourself? How do you work it to make it work for you? And that's why I provided this the way I did, because I think it's just kind of a fun exercise. So yes, RJ.
Well, what I want to add to this discussion is that I do believe when I first joined Spiritual Life Center, this was like back in 2000, I would go to a 1-hour service and people are good and, God is, and I would be really excited and I'd be like really high off of it. And then I realized that what I was thinking was just the beginning steps. So I think what I believed in 2000 is unity people are inherently good. But those people are not.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is that any group, every once in a while, I'll be up here on Sunday when we're doing the peace song, and I'll think of all these people have come together and we're agreeing to sing this song together. And I don't mean this. This is just a funny. I go, are we a bunch of weirdos? And I'm not. I'm not making fun of us. It's just like, look what we'd come together to do. Pardon? I know it does. And that's the thing is because I get to see everybody's faces, right? And how everybody gets so into that song. And, but I'm just watching it from out here. And I think it's really cool. And then and then it's like, well, we think we know what we're doing. But then we all think we know what we're doing. So and I just love it. I mean, this is not anything, I'm not making fun of us. It's just these thoughts. I'm observing human beings doing their thing. And how we kind of get into, well, this is right for me. This works for me. Why doesn't it work for you? Like you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I had to go through this whole thing. I started doing this exercise that, people in China are inherently good. People in Russia are inherently good. People in South America are inherently good. And Hamas is inherently good. And Trump is inherently good, and yada, yada. So the more I could see the inherent goodness in everybody, then that made more sense.
Well, and just being able to go back and think of this person, how this person started out. And then, there's a lot of experiences. Well, all children experience trauma. Some is much more, severe than others. But all that stuff that's been piled on us over all the years of growing up, even if we had a relatively stable home life, there's always school, I mean, all of the, because you're out there running into the world. And, and we're formed by that as well. So, okay, so you might try to, as we're doing this, if something comes to you, one of these, how you would say one of these differently, we can always come back to it. This doesn't have to be that linear. So, okay, so prayer. Oh, thoughts create our experiences. That's what we say on Sundays. But look what the full one is. Human beings create their experiences by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. There's actually a lot more here than what we say on Sunday.
I'm so glad I decided to stay tonight.
I'm so glad you did too.
Anyway, I think thought is helpful, but it's got to be married to your emotions to really manifest. There's got to be some kind of will or some kind of emotional back to it. Thought on its own, to me at least, is just part of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's, for me, my experiences, I would have people say something, and you could see it bringing their feelings down. In just one word, like somebody died, or I feel dead today. And then you have them do the opposite and say, wow, it's really a beautiful day and the sun is filling me and I feel joyful, and you can watch all their energy come back up. Mm-hmm. So if people don't believe that thoughts, control their life, and it's whatever the chatter is going on in your head, once you start observing that and get a hold of that and kick it out. I knew there was one person in growth, he would say, if a negative thought came through his head, he'd just say, instead of looking at it, he'd say, next, like watching them go across, next, until one that popped in that, okay, I like that. So we have that choice and that power.
Yeah. That's, and that's a practice, of course, right? And I don't know about you, but do you ever just have a day when something's going on in your head and you're feeling kind of grumpy? And you're kind of enjoying feeling that way, like, well, no, just like, and then, okay, all right, I got to get over it. But for a moment, it's like, it just feels good to kick rocks. And then, so, and that's not a bad thing to do if you don't get stuck in it, because you're also working out your emotions, Elaine.
Yeah, I like that. I love that you brought up the emotion side, Jeanette, because as I was processing it, I teach facilitate the quantum living course here, which kind of deals with the whole thing of these ingrained false myths that we get about ourselves that are around trauma. And and how 95% of we are unconscious about 95% of our thinking, and we just react based on these false myths we might have about ourselves or our viewpoints of the world that we really don't articulate. But if we really are afraid of every stranger or really believe there's lack in the world or, all that, you don't inherently think it and then react. It's just running. So when something happens, you react based on those thoughts, which can be unconscious.
Oh, yeah.
So what I love about this is the fact that we are learning to be emotionally intelligent. And what I love about that is that our emotions are the manifestations of our thoughts. And even these unconscious thoughts. So something happens, and me and you, Deborah, could see the exact same thing. And my experience with what just happened, this is an example of every family get-together. You can go to family Christmas or Thanksgiving, and somebody leaves mad, and other people thought it was a great party. So it doesn't matter what took place, but somebody's viewpoint about what somebody said, and it's how you interpret it, right? And your experience to it. But I love that they said that's why it goes, your thoughts, whether they're conscious or unconscious, will manifest first into feelings, and then your feelings manifest into action.
Yeah.
So that's how your thoughts create reality, but you know where you are based on your feelings. And if you don't know why you're angry, you might have to do some work and get curious of what is that thought. And so it's this backward vision. If you're angry all the time, what thought am I thinking? That then leads to, I go straight from an unconscious thought to action and rage.
Right, yeah.
But it's the feeling. We don't do that connection. So I love that you mentioned feelings.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
manifested. If you get happy, and because you're joyous and you love everyone, it shows you out manifesting love, like you were talking about today, RJ.
Right, yeah. I never got all the way through A Course in Miracles, and the reason is that I hit this one lesson, and it knocked my socks off. It threw me against the wall and slammed me about 5 times, and it was like it was you are never upset for the reason you think. And there was something in that, the way it hit me that day, it just changed everything. And essentially that, and honestly, that's kind of the cue process is in a real capsule. It's like, you're upset. Oh, okay, why? And when I was able to say, oh, I'm really upset, and I think I'm upset for this reason, but maybe I'm not, that's when I learned to start stepping back. And it wasn't perfect. It took a while. It took some practice. But it really got me off of going off on people, and it got me off of, because what am I believing about the situation? And what's the difference between a thought and a belief, Here we're going to really start splitting hairs. If you grow up having abusive parents, you're probably going to believe that people are not inherently good. If you grow up with loving, Father's knows best kind of parents, it might be easier to think that people are inherently good. But in my family, if you were to have talked with my brother and my sister and me, you'd think that we had 3 different parents. You wouldn't think that we had the same parents at all.
Pretty much everyone. I have 3 sons.
Yeah.
They all have a different attitude.
And they have a different mother, right? They all have a different mother. Yeah, and I had the best father in the family. My brother had the best mother. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, all this stuff that goes on in here.
Can you define your definition between a thought and a belief? You can repeat that.
The difference between a belief and a thought. For me, a thought is something that comes into my mind from it's like there's an idea, and then it becomes a thought, and then there's this one book that describes it really well, is that the thought comes in and it goes down into your solar plexus and you process it in your solar plexus. And when you decide that it's okay, that you accept it, then it just goes into your subconscious and you keep it and it becomes a belief. Does that make sense? And then you stored it, and since you've accepted it, the subconscious never questions it again.
Yeah, no, this is not mine, but I was curious if yours was different. It was something that in our coaching, Gary Simmons had said, that a belief is simply a thought that you keep thinking,
Exactly.
and then
Yeah.
it becomes your belief.
Yeah. It's a thought that you keep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That resonates as truth for you, then therefore it's your
Yeah,
belief.
yeah. But I like the way this Robert Hanel talks about that the thought comes in, we actually process it on some level, and we vet it, and then once we vetted it, the subconscious goes, if we've accepted it, the subconscious just takes it, and whether we've done a good job of vetting or not is another question. Yes.
Well, the miracles that I have had, I didn't have the thought. All of a sudden, it was there.
Okay, so now we've got knowing.
Knowing.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I've got some extra money in the checking account. Let's write a check to our church. So we did. We mailed it in. But that afternoon, after we mailed, I got a check from a bank for $6,000. I have no idea why, but it's there. And it wasn't as if, oh boy, I really need a check, I need some money. It was, here, Ronnie, you did the right thing for the first time in your life.
Well,
But it's happened. Our computer, somebody got into the computer and changed it all around. And we went to, I have a mobile phone and I pay money for it instead of having them bill me. And we went in and I got that, and the guy said, you know, if you went into this other program for fast internet, it'd only cost you $50 and you'd be making $50 a month less on your account. So I did. And it's just, it happens. I don't know. I don't think, gee, I need this or that. I guess I know it's going to be there.
yeah, and I think that's the training that those of us who have been in Unity for quite a while, is that we're going back to that. God is inherently good, is absolute good, and just I expect the universe to work that way. It's like, I think you all know, I'm getting ready to have my hip replaced, and there's a lot of conversation about it. And every once in a while I'll have somebody, oh, you're going to have a surgery. It's like, oh, thank God I can. And I'm so excited. It's like, can we do it tomorrow? I'm ready to move on, because I have absolutely no doubt. First of all, everyone's told me that is an easy recovery. But even if they weren't telling me that, I would have no doubt that for me it would work, because I absolutely believe that it will be. And I will do everything I'm supposed to do to help that along, and I'm preparing myself for it. I'm meditating, I'm getting energy, I'm doing all these things to make sure that when I go in there on money, I'm in alignment with the universe. And I'm pretty sure my doctor is. I think this man steps in from another dimension. He's just this cute guy. I think he comes from somewhere else, probably comes in, does the surgery, and goes back. That's just how I feel about him. And, so I'm making that up, but it works for me. And that's the other part of it. Sometimes the thing is we're making everything up all the time, you guys, if you really think about it. And there's, 10 of you out there, and we're all having exactly the same conversation, and we're having 10 different conversations all at the same time. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one?
I have a quickie here.
Yes. We've got plenty of time.
Oh, okay. So I'm getting back to this thing about, being really happy at a Unity church, and then 20 minutes later, then. Because what I need to do is I need to retrain my brain over and over and over again. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I think it takes time at least to unravel the old stinking thinking. So when I have a belief that my brother is good, and the truth is I know my brother is good, then I just kind of meditate and I feel so grateful for my brother and I'll do nice things for him. But if I'm not careful, the old patterns and the old 40 years of old junk resurfaces. Yeah, my brother's a schmuck. He did this and he did that, and I hated him, and then we fought. And so I have to really be mindful to keep this new thought, and I'm still a work in progress where I'm like making sure that each day I remind myself that SLC is good, my brother is good, my mom is good, my dad is good, everyone's good. And I have to remind myself and have a daily practice.
But, keep in mind, too, that family is the most challenging because you have so much history with them. At a young formative age as well. For me, being the youngest, they were all in my lives from the beginning, for always. There was never, they were always there. And so, there's all that history. Yes, Rob?
Well, I think everything starts with thoughts, and
Yes.
I do believe that the longer I think them, the more they become a belief.
Yes.
And a lot of times I have to think that now it becomes forgiveness if it's a belief that I don't agree with today, or it's something that I thought of, because I make mistakes and other people make mistakes, so I have to be able to forgive myself and others for whatever happens, but they can still be good people. I can still see God in them. I used to do an exercise where I just looked at people. I worked in the mall, and I would just look at people and see that God is in every one of these people and smile. And then see how many people smiled back. And a lot of people do. And it's nothing that, and it's just something, it's a thought that came over me, but I believe my thoughts can be given by God, too. I mean, these are thoughts that could be brought down through awareness or and then the love is also involved. So love or fear, and fear is, if I have more faith, I don't have as much fear. So I fall into the pattern of making mistakes myself and seeing other people making mistakes, but I have to be able to forgive this in order to believe that everybody's good. At the same time.
The idea that every person is doing their very best with what they have in the moment, and then the conversation goes, of course, to people who commit murder and all of that. For them, they are doing the best they can with what they have in the moment, and that's pretty hard to take, but they are. They're doing what they're doing. And that doesn't mean that we say they're doing a good thing. we don't approve of it. But go ahead.
Back to your hip.
I'm going to name it so we all know. Go ahead.
Well, what I get from what you're saying is visualization is very powerful.
Yeah.
And if you want something to turn out with the highest outcome, you're going to visualize the highest outcome.
Yeah.
And you more than likely brought this doctor in because you knew exactly from your own knowingness exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I strongly believe in that. And on your thoughts, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'm going, I thought I already cleared that. Yes. And I go, what did I miss? And I'm going, okay, what do you want me to see? I'll question it. Yes. And then I'm able to more freely let it go. When it stops arising, I know I've done my job.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is that this is a process, not a destination. We would love for it to be a destination, but, and it keeps coming around. People will say, well, I thought I cleared this. Why does it keep coming around? And what I started to do with that was, when I was in that process and it coming around again, I would stop and I'd go, okay, this is happening again. And then I would look and say, okay, how am I dealing with it now? And then I would look at and say, how did I deal with it last time? And I could almost always say, I'm doing better this time. Inchworm, yes.
And I love that nowadays all of the brain science and neuroscience is out there about, and we all know that a lot of the 12-step programs have the magical 21 days, and whether they understood it exactly why that was the number. But I love how in the Q practice we talk about having positive thoughts, or actually acknowledging when you have a thought that is not serving you anymore, whether it's, this is how my sister is, or this is, if it no longer serves you, you have to override those neural pathways. And not until I saw the video, they had a new video out, and they're saying it's actually from NASA, where when the astronauts are being trained, they do those inversion glasses because they have to get used to being upside down. So the glasses have you standing this way, but you see everything upside down. And they were able to show through science that when they wear the glasses for 21 straight days, their brain flips everything right side up. And then they tried doing it where they did it 19 days, took the glasses off for a while, put it back on, nothing flips. At 21 days, your brain flips. So if you have a particular person, try thinking the better thought for 21 days and changing the story.
Yeah.
Same with habits. They say that 21 days is the...
Yeah, that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Reiki training is if you're doing Reiki, you have to go at least 21 days before you can go to the next level. I mean, it's or getting a lot of treatments. The 21 is some magical number.
I was just thinking this a few minutes ago. When we, I think for me, at least at this point, it's coming back to the present moment.
Yeah.
And being, where am I at with this? And my situation's not as dire as Deborah, but I've had sciatica for 2 weeks. And boy, it's teaching me so much. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm grateful for it. And I was really mad at first, and because I'm very active and, but boy, this, and it really brings me back. Everything that happens to me is for my greater good.
Yeah.
And it's really how much I delve into the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, the inherently good and all of that it's like, because this has been going on, some other things have come to light that have been not serious, but other things are getting resolved because of this. And, and I'm also, I think I mentioned on Sunday, if you maybe you didn't hear the talk, but is that, yeah, I know that this is all one body, and I know that the hip bone is connected to the whatever bone. But when and yes, my left hip is going to get sore because it's compensating for the right one. But then when someone says, yeah, but that's also why your shoulder hurts, or yes, that's why this other thing is happening, it's like I'm getting sort of this crash course in exactly how this is only one thing. And it helps me in my teaching. It helps me in my own practice, but it also helps me in my teaching. But the other part is remembering who you're talking to. And I was married very briefly to this guy, and during that time, I was like 21, I worked in a bank. And this was in the 60s, where we were wearing pantyhose. You remember in the 60s when you put on a pair of pantyhose, and before you got them on, they had already run? Yes. Well, this gentleman did not like the fact that I had to buy pantyhose. Okay, so, 9 months later, we're divorced, and I'm on, and then I remarried. And one day I found myself standing there in front of my husband asking permission to buy pantyhose. And he was looking at me like I was absolutely nuts. And then what I realized was I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to the first guy. And it was this huge revelation. I went, oh, I'm not even, because he didn't care. And then I realized it was like, so now, if I'm feeling triggered by something, it's like, who am I talking to? Am I talking to the person in front of me? Or am I talking to some of this other stuff from the past? Because, yeah. And so the little pantyhose thing was a great lesson for me. And that was even before I was in metaphysics. But because he was looking at me like I was completely insane. Why would I care if you bought pantyhose?
Well, along that same line, it's sometimes your inner child.
Yeah.
From childhood that's really speaking up through you, and pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, this is also going to sound a little bizarre, but when I started doing some of these exercises where like I was in my room and I'm like, okay, the truth is I'm inherently good. Yes, yes. And I try and feel it in my body. And I get to it, and after about doing it for 20 minutes, I'm in like this really good place. And it really is, it's like flipping a light switch on in the room, and suddenly you're in the light. And this is the crazy part. So then I think, well, I better go back into the darkness so I can heal that inner boy. I can heal the wound. Well, so I go turn off the light to go find my wound, but now I'm in the darkness trying to fix the wound, and it's just this weird process that I was almost like being happy was so new that it felt weird to be happy.
No, that's a very valid thing because that wound is part of you, and so when you're starting to heal it, it doesn't feel normal.
Right.
Which takes us to the next one, because so what we say is prayer and meditation are how we connect with God, but the full one is prayer is creative thinking that heightens the connection with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and everything good. Yeah, I love the original version. So so what you're doing is you're doing the meditation part, and then you're just kind of stomping on it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have to remind myself that it's okay to stay there longer. It's okay to stay there. And I don't have to go back and revisit the wound. I don't have to go back and try and fix the wound or say, God, gee, how horrible that was. I don't have to commiserate with the wound. I don't have to be traumatized by the wound. I can just turn on the light, pray, meditate, and be in my new reality and be comfortable with it.
Right.
Be comfortable with happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a book called Oneness, and I see you, Dave. There's a book called Oneness, and it's a channeled book, and it's a very interesting book. There's a section in there where he's talking about how we're connected with each other, and so Elaine does something, and she makes me mad, and and so then maybe we work it out, and then I'm ready to move on, and this book and this being says so. If you decide to forgive them, what you're doing is you're actually going back and reconnecting. And so it talks about not really forgiveness in that respect, because you're re-engaging the energy. So if you're working through it, don't go back and re-engage the energy, move forward. Dave. You need to be on the microphone so the people on the live stream can hear you. We have 8,000 people at home listening.
Okay, how's that? A few years ago, Ronnie and I, were in Walmart, and she was coming up to the cash register, and she was about 6 people back. And I was up in the front just waiting, for her. And this lady got up there, and she got a bunch of groceries. She didn't have any money. Ronnie walked up there and handed her card and paid for it. The lady started crying.
Yeah.
Ronnie got up there, rang her stuff up, and she needed some paper bags. And Ronnie says, I'll pay for the bags. She says, you think we're going to charge you for bags after what you just did? It's just a true story, but I just watched it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she just handed it the card, and it was $65. And the
Right.
woman started crying.
Yeah. Because she probably actually needed food.
Yeah, she did.
But I love how it says prayer is creative thinking. So because we have all of our everyday thinking, and technically all thinking is creative. Okay, so here's one I might rewrite. I might say prayer is positive creative thinking. Or, something that heightens the connection with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom. Because all thought is creative. But you might use the word intentional in there. Prayer is intentional thinking. Jeanette.
I've been a prayer chaplain for a while now in this
Yeah,
community.
just a little bit, yeah.
But anyway, and it's really changed for me, my idea of prayer, going from Catholic upbringing where it was only Hail Marys and Our Fathers, and it's a totally different process. But I feel like sometimes it's not intentional, because I feel like when I am at my best praying with myself or with other people, it's like I'm just opening up to the possibilities of the divine, and
Right.
stuff just comes in.
Yeah.
And it's different than my regular thinking process, is all I can say.
I like, it's exactly what she is saying, in that when you just open up, you literally just become a channel.
Yeah.
And the wisdom, and you are able to grab those. We use the word very commonly in the unity movement around, and then I realize I'm at home talking to friends or family members, and they don't get the words download, or they don't, there's just certain things I say, oh yeah, I downloaded that, and which is just that it was given to me. It was a knowing that came.
It's just there.
And I want to definitely, I'm going to get to you next. I want to also address, this might be a very interesting concept, but I think Bob Cochran in his book, Hyperdimensional You talks about it, and the concept also with all these really brilliant quantum physicists, which I still don't get, because I was always, the way I picked a college major was, give me anything that doesn't involve science, because science is not what I'm wired. But when you talk about going and back to heal that little inner child and inner, I find helpful, I don't remember who the practitioner was who gave us this meditation, but the meditation was to, in that God light that you achieved, in that sense of reminding the good, the you are in this moment, then the meditation was, as you today in your perfect divinity that you are, that you remember being, you go and call forth that inner child, and you invite them to sit on your lap, you invite them to hold them, and you give that child everything they should have had, and you say, I love you, and I see you, and you're a good boy, and you're loved. And so you don't have to go back in the dark.
Right.
You go as you are now, because there's no time difference.
Right, exactly.
You know?
I don't remember what book it was, but Thich Nhat Hanh definitely had that concept.
Okay, we have one more one on this, because we have to get to the last one.
Well, I do believe, I like the fact that these build on each other. So God is good, people are good, thoughts are good, prayer and meditation is good.
Right.
Yeah, they
And
build.
then, yes, okay, so we must take action, which is what we say on Sundays. And here we go, Jeanette. Look at this one. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. That's very different. Now, Jeanette and I were talking before, and she said, it takes action. It sort of makes it sound like we just have to go out and do things where, sometimes sitting and not taking any overt action is actually the answer. So, yes.
I have a tendency to intellectualize, and so I'll read a book about something, and it'll be in my thoughts, but it doesn't necessarily get into my emotions. And that's what this reminds me of, that it's not enough to know and understand, that you have to embody it.
Mm-hmm. And learning to, or not learning, but embodying it takes time. Spiritual development can happen overnight, and it can take years, and it's usually a combination of both. You'll have those moments of ta-da, and then for the next 6 months or a year, you trudge along, and then there's maybe another ta-da. But yeah, and one of the reasons that any spiritual classes, like if you're in training for stuff, they take breaks in between to give you time to integrate it. Because if you don't take the time to integrate it, it all just stays in your head. Yes?
Well, I don't know if anyone's had this experience. I'm going to guess that most everyone has had this experience. So getting to the action part. So I'd done all the steps, and now I'm ready to take action, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a $100 sponsorship for the Mystic Cafe. But then I get to my computer, and then I start typing it in, and I get on the web page, and then I have to get to the point where I have to enter my name and my email address and my phone number, and then I have to click $100, and then I get to the point where I have to press enter. And so that's where the old body fear and judgments come in. Am I really going to spend $100? And that's where, it's kind of like after all those steps, preparing me to just go ahead and give lovingly the $100. I don't know how many times I've gotten to that point and just said, oh, no, never mind. I'll give 20 next time I'm at church on Sunday. And so recently I did. I pressed the button and I did do the sponsorship. So the more that I step out in the taking action, it fulfills those first 4 steps, and then it becomes reality. It's no longer just
Right.
some concept.
Which means you are living the truth that you
Living
know,
it.
or you're living the truth that you are learning. I think that's, and we're all still learning the truth. People probably think that I know a lot more than I do. I just, I've only got 50 years into this stuff, so I'm just a beginner. We're all just beginners, and if we give ourselves that break, But so the taking action. One of the ways I look at it is like I do everything that I know how to do in a certain situation if I'm wanting to manifest something in my life. And I don't have to work at it as much as I did when I first started because, like Ronnie says, it becomes part of you after a while. But it's like with the surgery thing, I'm doing everything that I know how to prepare my body, prepare my mind for it. And I just know that by the time I walk in there on Monday, I'm going to give it all up to God and know that all will be well.
And I think, like for me, learning to have compassion with myself of not getting it right, and I think taking those beautiful steps that you're talking about, I think of us as building our spiritual muscle.
Yeah.
And having that, taking steps in faith. And what I find too, just like my physical wellness, if I was doing a routine and running every day, it was easy. It's easy when you're doing it okay and you're accustomed to it and you've built up that routine. But I also know how quickly, even with a diet, that you step off of that and you fall into the fear or the double chocolates and everything else. And then even the first step of trying to do it is harder, and it's easier to say, I'm back in the fear, or I'm never going to get there. And so I just know that is the same in my own spiritual journey. And there's no arriving. I mean, I could be at a high and had a good year, and then something tragic happens in my life, and I am back to being a baby spiritually and having to work at forgiveness and love and self-love and all that.
Right. However, let us emphasize that we never ever backslide. You don't lose anything. You might get off track, you might get distracted, but you never ever lose anything. And I think it's very important for people to understand that. All right, we have time for like one more comment, and then we will do the offering. Any other? This was a great conversation, you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Next week, Reverend James is going to do a meditation, and he's calling it's one of our unwind meditations, which is a combination of visualization and silence, and he's calling it Presence, Acceptance, Joy, and Relaxation. So I will not be here. I'll be in the healing mode. So come spend the evening with James, and of course there'll be the meal. And of course, we have the opportunity to support Spiritual Life Center. So let us say our offering blessing together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I am, and all that we circulate. Thank you, God. It works either way. Well, there's so many people.
Thank you. 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 Pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring
offering taker. You guys, we were small but mighty tonight. And
All right.
It was an amazing conversation. Thank you for being open and comfortable and feeling safe enough to do this. Let's take a nice deep breath. And our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, I am, and all is well. Have a great week, and may the joys of the world go with you. Thank you.
Peace be with you until we meet again in the light of our hearts. Go in beauty. Peace be with you until